After the global food and financial crisis of 2008, private investors shifted their interest away from the real estate market and invested increasingly in agribusiness and in acquiring farmland. The development agenda has shifted in ways that give greater influence to private agribusiness companies in shaping policies to meet the ongoing challenges of food insecurity and hunger. The global interest for African farmland has therefore increased significantly. In Tanzania, the agricultural agenda is implemented through Southern Agricultural Growth Corridor of Tanzania, SAGOT. SAGOT was born out of the deliberations of the World Economic Forum on Africa held in May 2010 in Dar es Salaam. Tanzania was seen as part of a broader push for the development of agricultural growth corridors across Africa. Basically, the idea of SAGOT itself emerged from the Norwegian fertilizer giant Yara to develop unutilized land, and it was warmly welcomed by the government of Tanzania. SAGOT covers approximately one-third of mainland Tanzania. It extends north and south of the Central Rail and road that runs from Dar es Salaam to the northern areas of Zambia and Malawi. SAGOT receives support from the G7 New Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition. The UK government claims that the New Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition will lift 50 million people out of poverty by 2022. The New Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition provides financial aid for rich countries like the US and the UK and helps agribusinesses companies invest in the African agricultural sector. But in return, African countries are required to change their land, seed and trade rules in favor of agribusinesses. 10 African countries have signed up to the New Alliance. These are Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, Ethiopia, Ghana, Mozambique, Tanzania, Benin, Malawi, Nigeria, and Senegal. Around 50 multinational companies, including Monsanto, Cargill, Unilever, Yara, Diageo, Submiller, Syngenta, and around 100 African companies are also involved. The cooperation framework of the G7 New Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition foresees in support to Tanzania for the demarcation of village land in the SAGOT region with the aim of identifying land that can be allocated to private investors. The SAGOT program claims that it has planned to bring 350,000 hectares of land under commercial production by 2030, transition 10,000 small-scale farmers to commercial farmers, generate 420,000 new jobs, build and rehabilitate agriculture, support infrastructure such as roads, railways, dams, and irrigation systems, generate $1.2 billion in annual farming revenue, and lift 2 million people out of poverty within the same period. These large-scale investments in agriculture for food and non-food production purposes have put pressures on local land rights and food systems. This documentary film discusses the human rights issues raised by large-scale land acquisitions for plantation agriculture in Tanzania. These are residents from Dodolilo claiming back their land, which is occupied by Silverlands Tanzania Limited. Silverland is an agricultural investment fund and is a sub-fund of a Luxembourg-based private equity fund. The main sponsor is Silver Street Capital, based in the UK, London. The company produces wheat for brews and has received support from several international donors like UK's Development Finance Institution and the US Development Finance Institution. Land occupied by Silverlands was taken without prior and informed consent of local residents. Residents say they have no more land to build better houses.
There is no place to cultivate. There is no place to build houses. We share the little space remaining. We are worried about the future of our children.
According to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 3, the residents of Ludodolilo have no right to live a good life.
We are supposed to build our houses in good areas, but we are building in such rough places. Don't you see how this is a problem, especially during rainy season?
What is the actual size of land taken by Silverlands?
According to the available statistics, the investor cultivates 14,000 acres of land, but we know the farm size is bigger than that.
As you can see, all these areas and the villagers' houses you see are within the investor's area. Try to see how the investor has interfered with the villagers' land.
The majority of residents whose land has been taken have migrated to the bigger cities in search of non-existent jobs.
When many young villagers realized that there is no more land to cultivate, they decided to run away.
And what is the current situation of residents whose land has been taken away?
People here in town have become thieves. They rob people while our land is occupied by foreigners.
Those who have been left behind have lost hope to engage in any form of activity.
Villagers have rejected to engage in development activities. If you ask them to work, their response is, "How can we work with empty stomach?" You, as our reader, you can try to imagine. We have no land. We now live with our parents in such old age. How can we work? We need our land back.
On the contrary, a look around shows many unoccupied areas of land, but residents of Ludodolilo are still crying for the land occupied by the Silverlands. So what is the actual problem here?
Many areas in our ward are not suitable for agriculture. That's why you can see trees all over. But fortunately, the Almighty God gave only this area, which is now occupied by the investor. Even our ancestor used this land. We have no more land to cultivate than that. Even if you try to ask any person in this village to show you 1 acre of land to cultivate, you will find none.
Article 17, Section 2 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states, "No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property," but residents of Ludodolilo accuse Silverlands of felling off their trees and selling them without their consent.
All trees that belong to the citizens here are now owned by the investor. Citizens cannot harvest timber. The investor has harvested our timber.
Aggrieved residents say they have sat in countless meetings with various authorities with hope that the situation could be resolved.
Whenever we try to question, our leaders tell us that we should not waste our time. The investor occupies the land illegally, even the president knows that.
After Ludodolilo, our camera team went to Ihagaha suburb in Muwimbi village in Mufindi. Ihagaha is one of the suburbs in Muwimbi which faces the pinch of large-scale investments. Muwimbi has the population of 2,374 inhabitants, and subsistence farming is the main livelihood for the residents. In Ihagaha, we find Sour Hill Company producing maize and soya for the animal feed and not human consumption. Sour Hill is owned by 2 companies from Norway and UK, namely Green Resources and Africa Agriculture Development Company, AGDEFCO, respectively. The AGDEFCO has been contributing to the development of the Sagot initiative. Before Sao Hill occupied this land, it was owned by a local Tanzanian investor, and the land remained available for the residents to pass through and to conduct activities such as foraging for plants, mushrooms, and firewood. However, since 2010, the land was transferred from the local investor to Sao Hill, and it became fenced off, causing troubles to residents.
This was a very important place that we depended on for grazing, drinking water, and the fruits. Our children can no longer eat some fruits from the forest because they are fenced.
I now fetch water from very far, and I also fetch firewood from very far. I also graze very far away.
Similarly, children are obliged to walk a much greater distance to school since there are no more shortcuts to school available. Village leaders have tried several times to resolve the issue without success.
As a suburb leader, there is nothing I can do to help. When I try to take our complaints to my village chairman and no any measures taken, maybe there are some hidden agenda. I can only roll my eyes. So there is nothing I can do. I cannot force my chairperson to take action. When my chairperson says he has taken our complaints to the higher authorities, and if they don't come to solve the problem, what can I do? There is nothing I can do rather than keep on waiting while my people are suffering.
Company leaders are normally reluctant to attend meetings when they are called.
They are normally reluctant to attend meetings when they are called. If they attend the meeting, they would agree with all discussion, but their response is always non-existent. For example, in one of the meetings, they agreed to remove the fence so that people can access the river, but up to now, they have never done so.
In spite of the fact that investors provide temporary employment to people, the frequency of human rights violation during work is high. James Mwinuka is a laborer in Sao Hill Farm. He disclosed that working conditions are not at all conducive, since people spend hours producing for the investors instead of producing for their families.
We work on the investors' farm throughout the farming season. We work from Sunday to Sunday. Even though we are paid overtime, we don't have time to work on our own farms.
Let's see what is taking place in Lipokela. Lipokela village is located in Ruvuma region, in Songea Rural District with the population of 1,899 inhabitants. Residents in Lipokela grow maize, soya, beans, cassava, and sunflower. Ola Maviv is a coffee-growing company occupying 5,000 acres of land in Lipokela village. The company employs around 1,500 laborers from the surrounding area. Olam Aviv is a subsidiary of a Singapore-based international commodity trader. Olam International trades food and industrial raw materials across the world and also has large presence in Africa, with operations all over the continent, from forestry to rice plantations, cacao, coffee, cotton, oil palm, and rubber. In Tanzania, they focus on coffee. The arrival of Olam Aviv on the land that was cultivated by residents of the village until 2001 has placed more pressure upon the village's land access. Worse, the land was taken without free, prior, and informed consent of original users of the land. Remigius Njovu, one of the victims, explains.
When we arrived at the village office, we were told this: we called you here to correct some incentives, as being removed from here without any incentive is not fair. It is better we give you some retro money so that you can go to find some plots in other places. The current land that you are occupying belongs to the investor. You invaded it. Whether you like or not, you will have to move. Many people cried. We reluctantly received the money. Nobody was satisfied with the payments. For example, I owned 14 acres of land and I received $180. This has psychologically affected me because I used the land to raise my children well, educate them and sustain their life. My economic situation is very insecure. I do not know what to do.
The investment in Lipokela gravely violates women's rights, who constitute 70% of Tanzania's farmers. Fausta Anthony, a widow with 6 children and whose land was taken away for large-scale farming, is another victim of land grabbing. The question is, how does this poor widow take care of her children?
I take care of my children in a difficult situation because there is no land to grow food. I used the land to grow corn, of which I sold part of the harvest and reserved the other part for food. Since we lost our land, life has been so difficult.
As a result now, the residents are forced to survive by relying on labor activities and find themselves producing for the investor.
All of us who were moved from our rent have become casual laborers. Our future is uncertain.
Others have been forced to cultivate on hillsides, leading to environmental degradation. We are aware that large-scale farming assumes to solve the problem of employment, and it is reported that Olamaviv provides about 1,500 jobs to surrounding areas. However, these jobs still violate human rights.
Kwa hiyo maana yake ni kwamba bado mshahara ukidhi, kazi inafanya ngumu, lishe haitoshi. Ungekuja siku moja kusema niende kama stage kupeleleza jinsi gani watu wanafanya kazi huko. Kwa kweli kama una moyo utatoka la michozi.
Mheshimiwa, ile sio ajira yale manamba, ajira shilingi 4,000 toka asubuhi mpaka jioni. Ile pale ajira gani? Hivi wewe ukibalance 4,000 kwa kutwa, una familia, kula na kusomesha, maisha yako 4,000 itakusaidia nini?
What does the government say about residents' complaints?
Tabia hii ya watu wetu sasa hivi ya kuwa walalamishi bila sababu na kuorodhesha kero, yani kila Mtanzania anataka kuorodhesha kero. Badala ya kutatua kero, kila mtu ni kuorodhesha kero tu, ulalamishi na kuorodhesha kero. Hapana, hatuwezi kusonga mbele.
Residents in Lipokela were not allowed to speak with the national government leaders about their problems when they visited the farm.
There was a tour of the president to the investor's farm. We wanted to talk to him and the village executive officer promised us, but the Songea district officer, who was by then Mr. Mkirikiti, barred us from talking to the president, and he cautioned whoever dared talk to the president would be dealt with by the police. For sure we were scared. However, he promised to handle our issue after the president's departure. We obeyed to the order of the DC.
Residents, especially women, are really worried about the future of their children.
Kids are born. We continue living. Nowhere to farm. We farm on unfertile land. The hunger is in. We cannot survive. We are crying, we people from Lipokela village. We ask our president to help us. The president we elected.
So what is the solution to the problem of land grabbing to small-scale farmers?
Stopping foreign investment in our country is the only solution to land grabbing.
The achievements attained by small-scale farmers in Mbinga district is enough indicator that a farmer can be successful without depending on foreign investors. Choteri Msembere is a small-scale farmer and the chairperson of Mviwambi.
I am a chairperson of the network of 57 groups of farmers in Mbinga. We collect coffee from individual farmers who are members of this network and take the coffee for processing and thereafter go to sell on our own in Moshi.
Through their network, they are able to farm, harvest and sell their crops to a buyer of their choice.
We grow our coffee on our own, as you can see. We collect on our own and we take the harvests to the market. From the market, we get enough money.
What benefits does a farmer in Mviwambi get from the network?
Through our unit, we can access loan from bank and the other financial institutions. When a farmer sells his coffee through our network, he gets more profit than selling to various companies which are here in Mbinga, because the profit goes directly to a farmer.
Has the network received loans from any institution?
Yes, the National Microfinance Bank has given us a loan of $227,000 because of coffee-related activities. The money went into our account, and when a farmer brought in his coffee, he received 3/4 of the money as an advance, and after selling, the whole stock farmers received the remaining amount.
As a farmer, what has Choteri benefited from agriculture since he joined Mviwambi?
Coffee has economically helped me. For example, I have built a good house. I have 1 milling machine. I have 2 machines for coffee processing. I have 2 bikes, 1 car because of coffee. My annual income before reduction production cost is between $5,000 and $6,000. But if I deduct all costs of production, my income ranges between $2,500 $3,000.
Zakeyo Herbert is one of the members in Mviwambi. He has become very successful through growing coffee and maize.
From coffee production, I have been able to buy this car. As you can see, it is a Kenta.
But how much does Zakeyo earn annually?
After deduction or production cost, I remain with $5,000.
Thus, development to small-scale farmers is possible without large foreign investments. What is required is unity and strength from small-scale farmers so that they may produce and sell to foreigners, just as Choteri advises.
Foreigners should come to buy from what we produce instead of them coming to cultivate here. We are able to produce enough to sell to them. It is upon all local farmers to unite and produce enough to satisfy foreign markets.
Access to land for farmers and pastoralists is crucial because their livelihood depends on it, which eventually will determine their capacity to produce food and or sell their own products. The fact that large pieces of land allocated to foreign investors compromises local farmers' prospects for expanding their activities as well as securing land for future generations. Locals and landowners are not adequately informed of their rights, negotiations, powers and entitlements within land transactions. The situation has made it extremely problematic due to the fact that investors usually contact only village leaders and other government authorities and ignore other local inhabitants. Wealthy foreigners are rapidly taking over the productive lands in Africa and turning Africans into refugees and slave laborers in their own homeland. Land grabbing by the foreign investors has become an issue of concern in many African countries. The earlier we achieve to raise awareness, especially on the potential threats these accusations pose to land rights and livelihood of smallholder farmers, pastoralists, indigenous communities, and other vulnerable groups, the better it will be for all of us.